Welcome to Prepare for Takeoff. I'm the creator and host, Terry L. Cyrus. We're the podcast dedicated to amplifying Black excellence. Every week, we sit down with a proven professional or a rising entrepreneur. This week, we're sitting down with real estate developer and entrepreneur, Rashane L. Lonzo. Rashane, what's going on, Soror?
Hey, what's going on, Fred?
You're rocking that red, got your pearls on, so you DST all day.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us today, and I look forward to unpacking your incredible story for our viewers and listeners. With that being said, where did it start for you?
So first, let me just say thank you for the opportunity. I've been watching the podcast, and I'm always looking like, wow, these are some amazing people on here, right? Like the stories and the journey, I think is just, it helps edify us and build us. And so I'm hoping to add to that. And yeah, so I'm originally from Detroit, on the west side of Detroit. That's where I'm kind of born and raised. And yeah, that's where my family's from. And that's where I started.
So you from the D, Detroit stand up.
Yeah, stand up, right?
So what was it like growing up in Detroit on the west side in particular?
You know what? Detroit was interesting. It was interesting. I think Detroit was my first teacher before entering any classroom for real, going to college. Detroit was my first teacher, just a lived experience. And I've lived a little bit on the east side, mostly primarily though, I'm from the west side of Detroit. Look, we're resilient. That's one thing for sure. Wherever you go, you meet somebody that's from Detroit, they're gonna tell you, like, we're resilient. We learn very early how to navigate life. So that's what Detroit kind of taught me, is navigating life.
Now, speaking of life, did life come with any adversity at any point in time growing up in your adolescence?
Yeah. So this is this interesting story, and as we kind of move through it, you'll see this where my passion from for housing and development kind of come from. But it's that early kind of introduction to, I would say, poverty. So when you're poor and you don't realize you're poor, right? Like we lived in a project, not even know it was the project, because it was just houses that all looked alike, apartments in a little section of, a section of the city. And so growing up, that's what I knew. And so I remember the first time, because we experienced a lot of homelessness growing up. That's what I do remember. A lot of homelessness, a lot of moving around, a lot of food insecurity. And for some reason, we always kind of ended up at my grandfather's house. So it was like in between these sections of being evicted before I knew what eviction was. We will always kind of end up at a family member's house. And for us, the anchor was my grandfather. And so, yeah, I kind of remember that moving around. And I remember just being thankful that my grandfather owned his home, because every time when we didn't have anywhere to go, we knew that we could go there. And kind of growing up, little backstory. So my mom was a single parent. I have two other siblings with my mom, and we all have different dads. And I was the only one of the three that didn't know who my dad was. So I didn't meet my dad until I was 14 years old. And so life kind of had its way with me. And I had a child when I was 14 too. And ironically, even though that was like one of the toughest seasons of my life, being pregnant with my son and deciding to keep him, because that's a whole story in and of itself, because I was told, hey, you're never going to be anything if you keep the child. You know, you need to give him up for adoption. And I remember going down that road of thinking, okay, I'm going to give him up for adoption then, because I'm 14 and we were moving from place to place. And so I remember going into labor and having this experience where it was this high risk pregnancy and having this emergency C-section at 14. So imagine, it's at Providence Hospital in Southfield, Michigan, being 14 and having this, what I would say now is a traumatic experience. You're giving birth at 14. And I remember in my delivery room, I remember the adoption agency coming in to take my son, because I had gone through the process to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, because I can't take care of him and life was just lifing. And so the doctor that did the emergency C-section, her name was Dr. Faith Stone. And this is no lie, right? Faith Stone on his birth certificate. And she was a Black doctor. So that was my first experience with a African-American doctor as well, OB. And she said, you know what? I want you to reconsider giving him up for adoption. I know the agency is here. She said, but I think you're going to be okay. So I think that there's something happening here and something special about this. So I think you should keep him, and you'll see, you'll be okay. And what I didn't realize is that what she was teaching me in that moment was that sometimes those toughest decisions are the ones that kind of catapult us to the next thought process, right? That changes our life. It changes the trajectory of our life. And in that moment, when I decided to keep him, he was the reason that I decided to work so hard to stay in school, to make sure that raising him, I wasn't moving from house to house anymore. Like I needed to buckle down. Like it didn't matter what my environment looked like. And when I say environment, I'm talking, it was a lot of drugs, a lot of gun violence, all of that. And so I was like, okay, this is my reason wanting to do different. My son was my reason for wanting to do different, even at 14. What that changed for me is that I made sure that whatever I needed to do to survive and make it out, go to college, graduate from high school, that's what I did. So those 4 years from 14 actually to 18 years old, that is exactly what I did. I lived on 7 Mile in Southfield, and I used to catch the bus from 7 Mile Southfield out to Dearborn to Fairlane Mall. And I used to work at the mall. And then I went to school in the morning from like 7 until 3, get on the bus, go to work, come home, take care of him. And these are where those extended families really matter, because my grandmother would help me raise my son. My mom, when she could, would help me. But it was that community and that sense of community that made me that gave me what I needed, the support I needed to stay in high school. So I ended up graduating from high school at 18, and I only applied to one college, and that was Michigan State University. So that was the only college I applied to, and I got a scholarship to Michigan State University. And so I moved out into East Lansing in student housing. I was 18 and my son was 4. And so that started the next chapter. I'm not even going to say the second chapter. I don't even know what chapter that was, but it was the next chapter of my life. So that was a little bit of my kind of childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot to navigate at such an early age.
Yeah.
To be introduced to motherhood at just 14, and then your living circumstances, they weren't necessarily ideal. So that came with its own set of stressors. And then, the labels that people may have attempted to put on you. You're 14, you're a mother. What are you going to be able to accomplish as far as going to college? You need to get a job, whatever the case may be. But you stayed the course, and you had that support system in your family, an extended family, that allows you to do so. What led you to picking Michigan State?
So the only reason I actually chose Michigan State is because I had a cousin who was in the military. His name is Sean. He was in the military, went to the military, was home for a little bit, and then he went to Michigan State. So that was my experience of learning about Michigan State. It was like this cousin that was 8 years older than I, that was what I knew, is that he lived in East Lansing for a period of time and he was at Michigan State. And I just want to go back to something you said about the support system. The support system was very important. And I didn't even realize that my support system was very dysfunctional, right? You don't know that you're living in dysfunction until you're out of the dysfunction. And sometimes we normalize the dysfunction in our lives, not knowing that there is something different. And especially if this dysfunction what we thrive in. And so I didn't realize that. I knew enough to know that my situation wasn't what I wanted my son to experience, but I didn't know enough yet to know that there were systems in place that made it challenging for me as a single Black teenage mom, right? There were that challenge in and of itself, but then there were other systemic factors that kind of played in that. And so fortunately for me, I think with Michigan State, they were enrolling a lot of minority students from the Detroit area. And so I qualified for my GPA was relatively high considering my circumstances. And I chose Michigan State because it was familiar through association of someone I knew. And so I'm like, even though I don't know anyone, because by the time I got to Michigan State, he had graduated, that was the only experience of higher education that I had. So I just went after that only experience that I had. So it was the limited knowledge of what college was through my cousin, and then knowing of Michigan State through him. And so that was why I applied. And I think at the time, because when I tell the story now, people are like, you only applied to one college. And I'm like, yeah, but see, for me, it was like I didn't have a plan B. So my plan A and my only plan at that time was I need to apply to college. I need to get into college. So I needed to do everything that led me up to get there. And then I didn't have a plan B. I was going to make whatever plan that came of that, I was going to make it work. And I realized when we get to this part of the real estate development, that even in that, like, you have to have these plan A, plan B, and plan C's and all of that. But really at the end of the day, when you have to walking a certain level of, I think, resilience and tenacity. You say, I'm going to make this work. Like this has to work, and I need to figure out how to make it work. And I think I brought that with me to Michigan State because I was a non-traditional college student. You know, I'm 18. I got a 4-year-old with me. They didn't have a whole lot of resources available. So I remember taking classes. I worked during the day so that I can have income. And I took classes at night, and I would take my son to school with me at night. So the big lecture halls, I would have him with his coloring books and his reading books. And we would sit in the back of the lecture hall, and I would have him working and doing his stuff. And that's how I navigated that system. And like I said, that's what I learned really early, that there are a lot of systems that we need to learn how to navigate. Life being that first system for me coming from Detroit. But then additionally, after that, I kind of looked at everything as a system that I needed to learn. I need to learn how to navigate it in order to survive. I didn't have a plan B. This is my plan A, and this is what I need to do. And how do I make this work?
You have to approach a lot of things in life that way, because if you have an exit strategy, you may exit prematurely. And if you have the determination, which clearly you have, that it's going to work, you're going to make a way out of no way, and whatever way comes your way, you're going to make it a reality. If you have that mindset, then, you know, you'll succeed more times than not. And not even more times than not. One of the people that I had on my podcast some time ago, he said, success is inevitable. It's just a matter of staying the course. No matter what it is you're trying to succeed at, you'll be successful if you stay the course, because you have certain innate characteristics that allow you to navigate the reality as you know it. And then you'll have learned behavior that you will end up assuming based on what your exposure is. And then if you're doing something, especially if it's something promising and it's something positive, people will come to your aid to help assist you in what it is you're doing. I think ultimately we want to see each other win. And if I can contribute to your success and say I paid it forward, or I'm helping somebody get to their destination, then it warms my spirit in doing so. And especially if you're dealing with a young person and you're dealing with somebody that, despite their circumstances, they're continuing to press on, someone is going to find themselves your way and say, what can I do to help this young lady? What can I do to help this young man? Now, so you went to Michigan State, so you knew that it was one school for you. This is what you were exposed to. And because they were enrolling a lot of kids from the Detroit area, I'm certain that came with some kind of economic incentives as well, as far as financial aid, grants, whatever the case may be. Was there an adjustment period that you had to make from going from Detroit, living in these circumstances that people may see to be, you know, stressful as it relates to the projects, as it relates to, you know, somewhere where it's an under-resourced area of the city, to go from there to East Lansing? What adjustment period was it for you, or was it a smooth transition because it had nothing on what you knew your reality to be prior to arriving to college?
So that's a pretty interesting question, because I said I've always lived in Detroit proper. And like I said, when we were displaced, I moved with my grandfather. My grandfather had a home in Rollo Township, which was in the Ferndale School District. So because he was the stability for us, we always used his address. So that was one thing we learned really early. So as I navigated and experienced all of these different housing experiences throughout Detroit, I probably had, 7 or 8 addresses that I could remember. My grandfather represented stability because he owned his house. He had built it. He was from the South. His father was a slave. And he had come here to Michigan, and he had built this house in Rollo Township. So that was the address that I used. So what that afforded me was stability as it relates to education. So I actually went to Ferndale High School, which was predominantly white at the time. So we're talking, I'm older, right? So we're talking in the early 80s, late 80s. It was predominantly white. And so I think that made my transition to Michigan State easier and smoother. And it also allowed me to understand 2 aspects of life. So I was from the hood. I lived in Detroit, and I'm talking like getting up at 6 a.m., catching 3 buses out to Ferndale High School to get to school on time. And then also being at my house and witnessing gunshots through my window at night when I had to go back to my home. And so that allowed me a couple different I think cities and perspectives. Being in Ferndale, growing up in Ferndale, which was predominantly white, and then transition to Michigan State, it wasn't as much of a culture shock for me per se, just because of that experience. And you mentioned something about paying it forward. And one thing that I had to tell myself, and this was just like kind of to hype me up and keep me positive throughout my journey, was that these experiences that I'm having, they're not just about me, right? Like my experiences are about helping to edify someone else, helping to make someone else's journey a lot smoother than mine, helping someone else not have to cross those same barriers, or teaching them how to go around or over that barrier. Like my experiences are not about myself, even though they were very traumatic. They're not about just me and my journey. They're about how do I help the next teen mother that finds herself pregnant at 14 and think that she doesn't have a clue, right? Or how do I help someone navigate and have hope about going to college even after having a child, or getting through college and then being an entrepreneur, right? And so all of these experiences for me are for me to be able to share with someone else so I can help someone else on their journey. And my whole thought process is that God has already edified someone else to do that for me. And so always I'm thinking like, okay, God, you open a door that no man can close. You know, you connect me to who I need to be connected to through this, whatever season. Because my thought process is also that God protected me in the wilderness, and he didn't protect me as a child at 14 and all of that stuff for me to get here and just be super lost, right? He protected me because he had a goal and a purpose for me. And so I try to keep all of that in mind as I kind of continue even my journey today.
So now, after you finished your studies at Michigan State, what did you find yourself doing as far as employment and your career choice?
Yeah, so I initially was thinking I wanted to be a doctor, right? Because I'm like, that's so cool, like being a doctor, and I can go and save lives and all of this. And so what I ended up doing was taking a medical assistant class, and we had to draw blood, and I almost passed out. So I'm like, yeah, this is not, I don't like blood. Like I'm scary. Like I don't like the sight of blood. I got queasy. And I'm like, hey, I need to do something different. And so my other passion had been really just advocating for people. And so I felt like, okay, criminal justice would be good because I could be an attorney. I want to be a lawyer, criminal defense lawyer. And so that was my major at Michigan State, was criminal justice. And so throughout college, I've always worked a couple of nonprofits. I've worked at a couple of shelters, worked at the American Cancer Society. Who hasn't, like when they was in college, were in college. So I had those kind of jobs. And then that was also where I learned how to be an entrepreneur, was at Michigan State. I was a junior at Michigan State, and I was trying to make extra money so that I can send my son to private school. And I said, you know what is a skill that I can monetize? Because that's the only thing I thought of, is what do I have in house? And a lot of times I think we have these ideas of what we want to do, and we think that they're so far fetched, and we never take inventory of what we have in house. So I had to say, what skill set do I have that I can monetize? And I'm like, we had a large international population. So I said, an international student population at Michigan State. And I'm like, wow, I can speak English pretty well. Like, what if I started tutoring English, to some of our international students? And what I did, I took a semester of Japanese at the community college and learn how to speak Japanese. So I'll do that. Yushiko, yeah, tenke desu ne. So desu ne. So I learned to speak Japanese, and then I went and started approaching Japanese students and asking them if they needed a tutor. So then their families would contract me to tutor them English, right, while they were here. And so that was the first skill that I monetized. That was the very first experience I had of becoming an entrepreneur. And so as I navigated that and graduated, I went and worked for the Department of Corrections for a little bit, got my bachelor's degree, and realized that the Department of Corrections wasn't for me. I was a corrections officer, and my goal was to kind of go into parole probation and eventually the law school. And I got there, and I just realized it was a little different. I was in a level 6, which was the highest security level. We didn't have many female Black officers then, and it was tough. I got assaulted by an inmate, was off work for a little bit. And then I took that time to reassess my life and said, I want to do something different. And I went back and got my MBA, and then went to teach at a community college here while I worked on my other business, which is a vocational skills trade school.
You're somebody who has worn her fair share of hats, and you are the epitome of somebody that no matter what life throws at you, if they throw you lemons, you're going to make the best lemonade that money can buy. And think about it, as our viewers and listeners, hear you unpacking your journey. Become a mother at 14, and then to transition from making the trip back and forth from inner city Detroit out to the suburbs just so you could get an education that I'm certain will prepare you for Michigan State. Then you go to Michigan State and you excel and you put on this entrepreneurial hat because you're about your hustle. And then go to get a job in the Department of Corrections because, hey, this is going to be a path that I find myself on as far as criminal justice. And then you have the unfortunate set of circumstances of being assaulted. A lot of people, they would have said, you know what, life is life and way too much for me. But you said, nah, I ain't built that way. The way I'm built, there's a problem, I'm gonna go through it. And then you went back to school, got your MBA, started teaching, and was building another business. So this is clearly something that's in your spirit, which brings me to my next question. As far as being an entrepreneur, I'm sure you've seen your fair share of illegal entrepreneurs in the hood, but what sparked your entrepreneurial spirit? Was it what you've seen growing up? Was it somebody in your family? What sparked that?
Yeah, I didn't see any entrepreneurs growing up, like you said, legal entrepreneurs. Like I didn't see any entrepreneurs. I didn't have like a role model per se when it came to that. And I think I stumbled into entrepreneurship just because I had experienced so much life of not having something. And so again, it just fell back on what skill can I monetize? Literally, that was it. I was like, what can I do? I'm in college. It's probably like 20 at the time. Like, what skill can I monetize? How can I make more money than what I'm making at my, job that I was working during the day? Like I can do tutoring at night on the weekends. And I just looked at a skill that I could monetize and then a service that was needed. So that's the big part of it too, is figuring out what the needs are. And if you can meet that need, because people pay people for solutions. So I think about how can I be a solution? And during that season, the solution was tutoring English. And so that was kind of how I, started that. And then I did realize though, once I entered that space of being an entrepreneur, not even realizing what it was, I liked it. I like the idea of being able to create something from nothing. I like the idea of problem solving. I remember subcontracting my first tutor, because then I started hiring students to work for me as subcontractors. That way I could scale, I could do more. And that was nothing that I learned in a classroom. That was something that I learned, I think, again, a lesson that life was that teacher, is that, if you want it, you're going to have to work for it. And what solution can you provide? And again, like what skill or problem can you monetize? And so that's kind of where I got started. And then what I did is, because my vocational school, which is DRM International Learning Center, will be operating, it's 24 years this year that we've been in business. So 24 years this year, that started off as tutoring and then went into some cognitive retraining kind of stuff, working with people that had traumatic brain injuries, like working with them for tutoring. And then one of the things that I kind of entered into the space of figuring out what types of trades were popular that in my area that needed some kind of short-term training for. So I realized that everyone is not going to go to college. And I knew that from my own experience, moving around a lot, and then me going to Ferndale High School and graduating from Ferndale High School. I remember there was a lot of students weren't planning on going to a four-year university. And so they were thinking about what other kind of skill trade that they could do. And I took that knowledge that I had from high school, fast forward 10 years, it's like when I thought about the vocational skill trades, it's like, okay, what's in demand right now? So I started contacting local employers to figure out what was in demand in our area. It was nurse assistant, it was home health aides, it was phlebotomy technician, and then aides that worked with individuals that were in hospice or dementia. And so that's where I started kind of focusing my energy on, is doing the licensing to own my own school. And so that was how that was birthed 24 years ago.
To just have the foresight to call and do your market research, that's far beyond your years. You're talking about having done that so many years ago. Those are just gems that you're leaving with our viewers and listeners. If there's an opportunity, but you have to first seize the opportunity by doing your due diligence, by doing your research and making the determination, what are the needs in the community and how can I best supply those needs? It's supply, demand. That's just business 101. And so you had this business and you were providing opportunities, giving back in your own way into the community as it relates to being able to employ individuals who weren't afforded the opportunity to go to college. They needed to make some money, and you were able to show them these are some ways in which you can make money. You don't want to draw any blood because blood grosses you out, but that doesn't mean that somebody that down the street or somebody looking for employment, blood may not bother them. They grew up seeing blood. So if I can make money drawing blood, count me in. And I can put my scrubs on and have people looking at me in a manner that they may look at me by comparison to if I have on sweats or jeans. People engage you based on how they perceive you. So if you have on scrubs, then they're not going to perceive you as a thug because clearly you're working in some capacity in the medical field. So I'm certain that that's something that even raised people's spirits, because if my spirit has been elevated, now I can receive the gifts that the universe and who I choose to call my higher power is going to bestow on you. And if you're operating from a low vibration point of view and you are associated with the things that are likely to be associated with those things, whether it's the street, whether it's making fast money, making money that doesn't involve you paying taxes, then you're going to be teetering in the other way. You're going to be listening to the enemy, and the enemy's going to have a hold on you. And the enemy will make a whole fool out of you. But you are able to show and lead by example, not me, not on my watch, and I'm going to show you how to make lemonade out of lemons because I'm proof positive that it can be done. I don't want to hear it. I don't care what life is throwing your way. I had a C-section at 14. Miss me with the excuses. You can get it done. You can totally get it done. As you were building in the community, you wanted to at some point transition into actually building things in the community. So what led to your real estate development endeavors?
So that's interesting because the thing is, I'm going to say COVID, right? So COVID taught me a couple different things. COVID taught me that systems are not always fair. It validated that systems are not always fair. It taught me that you must have multiple streams of income in order to be successful. It kind of gave me a PhD in resilience because at the time, the first businesses that were closing were businesses owned by African Americans. And so it was like, because we didn't have that access to capital. We didn't understand the importance of building that relationship, that bankable. We didn't know what it was to be bankable. We just knew how to do business, right? We knew how to provide, we knew how to solve a problem. And so you had all of these businesses that were a lot of Black-owned businesses that were kind of succumbing to the effects of the pandemic. You had some that thrived and you had some that were like, I'm not going to make it. And so during that season, I remember the first couple, actually the first week or so of the pandemic before it was like a national kind of, okay, we're going to shut down. I was thinking how am I going to survive? And if I didn't figure out how my business was going to pivot and survive, I knew it would be the end of it. And so what we started to do, because we took advantage of the fact that we were a privately owned vocational school. So we're privately owned. We hold our own license. We're licensed throughout the state of Michigan. And so a lot of when those public training centers and things were closing for the pandemic, I had to make a choice to say, what if I find a group of my nurses that they don't want to go into the hospital because of what's happening, but they want to teach. Then we started figuring out how to make the classes safe by only having 10 students at a time. And then how could I get the contracts with the hospitals and stuff to still bring my students in? And during that year, COVID year was the best year because we trained, because we were the only ones open, over, I think, 50 healthcare professionals in that one year from March until December. And it was because, like I said, we were privately owned. I could, at that point, make my own rules as long as I did what the state told me to do. But I could choose to stay open because it was profitable for us to do that. And there was a need. The problem was that you had a lot of people exiting healthcare. So how can I jump in and help fill this need? And so that's what we did. And during that season, I realized that, okay, life is short. I needed to have something else that was going to provide another stream of income. And I had always been drawn to affordable housing, community redevelopment, because I'm in workforce development. That's what I do with workforce training and vocational skills. And so my husband had always talked about owning a cigar lounge. And so we decided during that pandemic, during those 2 years, 2021 and 22, what is it? Because life is so short. So what is it that we really want to do that allows me to have my own impact? aside from the school, aside from anything else, that allows me to take my life learned experiences and combine them and create opportunities at the same time. And so our first, I call economic development, right? The first project was we took a restaurant that was closed because of the pandemic and didn't open back up. We took that restaurant, we figured out what the licensing requirements were to open a cigar lounge, did the research, hired the right attorneys, and then we opened a cigar lounge in 2023, Comfort Zone Cigar Lounge and Bistro. So we were the only Black owned within about 100-mile radius, a cigar lounge and bistro. Right now, today, we still are. So 100-mile radius, we're the only Black owned. We own our own liquor license, our own cigar exemption license. So it's a straight up lounge. You come, you sit, you chill. You can smoke. We got a humidor. We carry over 1,000 faces, which is 1,000 different types of cigars. And we have a full bar and restaurant. So we remodeled, developed that space. And that, like I said, that was my husband's idea. And we did that together. And then one of the things that I wanted to do was find some space where we could do affordable housing and, combine our workforce training, partner with some other community needs that this one specific area needed. And we started looking for real estate, and we ended up finding it was a furniture store. It's about 22,000 square foot furniture store that had closed down. It had been closed for about 3 years. And instantly when I went there, it was just, and it's in the area of our community that there's been a lot of disinvestment in, right? So it's been an area, at one point it was thriving. They ended up building a highway expressway through the area. So it dislocated and displaced a lot of business owners, a lot of families. And I said, you know what? I could envision the rebirth of this location. Like I could vision just housing and vibrancy and walkability. And so I put an offer in on the space. They accepted it. I bought it. And so from 2023 to current, I've been working on building the financial stack. And so I've written a couple grants, and we have gotten some final approvals. And so we are working on, it's 11 affordable housing apartments on the second story. And on the main level, in this little, we call it the Saginaw Corridor here in Lansing, Michigan. On the lower level, we're going to move our Learning Center, will be one of the anchor tenants. We partnered with the Child Care Center. That'll be their second location. We have a letter of interest from an urgent care that's interested in moving in the area. So again, when I talk about assessing needs and figuring out what the problem was, we went into the community to figure out what the community needs, and so we knew that there was a need for childcare. We knew that there was a need for healthcare because a lot of those areas and industries have moved out of that space. And so that's what we kind of just been doing, is working on building that. And yeah, so I'm extremely passionate about it. It is something that started as this dream. It is a $10 million project. I've secured $4.5 million in grants. And so right now we're just working on closing the financial stack for that. And let me tell you, this is right now, I'm the only Black female real estate developer with this type of project in our community. And so I'm excited about that. And it has been a learning journey, because this is an industry that I know I don't think it's not cut out. It wasn't made for Black women, right? So we have to make sure that once we get in the door and get to the table, that we are not only having a voice at that table, but that we're bringing another Black woman with us to sit at that table. And so yeah, it's a whole lot in there, because that's been a journey. Like, that has been the real journey, is these last 2 years, building the financial stack, learning about real estate, learning what a pro forma is, learning about a brownfield, learning about tax incentives, learning about various grants, learning about affordable housing, learning about mixed use, and just bringing all these pieces together and creating a team that makes me credible. And so, yeah.
Thinking about starting your own business? Make it real with Shopify, the all-in-one platform trusted by millions to sell online and in person. Whether it's merch, art, or digital goods, Shopify gives you the tools to build, grow, and succeed. And here's the best part. When you sign up using the affiliate link in our show notes, you're supporting Prepare for Takeoff and starting your business off right. Click the link and start your free trial today. Please allow me to congratulate both you and your husband who's also a fellow proud member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So Coleman, love all day. You and your husband are pouring into one another, and that's what we're all about. We're all about pouring into our community resources, whatever I have to contribute to what it is you guys are doing. Count me in. I do have some people in my network that may be able to make a contribution as far as providing some expertise on how to raise that additional capital you guys are looking to secure. We'll definitely plug you in with the right people, be it that we are based in New York City, where Wall Street anchors the economic universe. There are a lot of resources that we've been afforded over the years. So just know and understand that you can count us in at Outspoken Media Group. We're all about helping those in the community and seeing people continue to elevate. And you guys are clearly doing that. You are building these building blocks that are going to build even more success, not just for you, but those around you, which is an amazing story in and of itself. So with all of the things that you've been able to accomplish, I hear a book, a Lifetime movie. I hear so many different things in your journey. Have you entertained doing any of those things?
It's funny because, I've thought about writing a book. I've thought about doing some consulting and teaching others how to navigate being an emerging developer and how to navigate systems, because that's really what it's about, is navigating and learning the systems. And I have thought about that.
This is a Lifetime movie in the making. Your story is incredible. I mean, you could have threw in the towel a long time ago. But I think, like as they say, God makes no mistakes. The people who are going to be bestowed the most blessings, he gives them sometimes the toughest challenges. Because you can lead by example. You can show people that there are no excuses. If you want to succeed, then the only person that's going to stop you from succeeding is the person in the mirror. And it serves you well to find a partner who has the same belief system. Because the enemy is going to challenge you. The enemy is going to challenge you in fear and doubt. And you have to just believe that inner voice that you can make a way out of no way. And one of the things we're saying that I always encourage people to do is pursue your passion. I ask people all the time, what is it that you want to do? In a perfect world, what would you see yourself doing? And I seen something online. Ice Cube said something, and this is something that I just shared with my Sans a couple of years ago, who's also a proud member of DSC. And we share the same number. We're both number ones on the Spring 91 line. But one of the things I shared with her is, what is it that you want to do? And are you willing to do that for at least 2 or 3 years and make no money doing it? And what Ice Cube said is, are you willing to do something for 5 years without making any money? Because if you're willing to do something and you're not motivated by financial return, you're just motivated by how it makes your spirit feel, because you're passionate about what it is you're doing. You heard the old saying, we all know it. If you find something that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's very telling, because when you find that person, whether it's our generation or the generation before ours, that guy who's a lawyer, that guy who's a doctor, that guy who's a business owner, a barber, whatever the case may be, he's doing those things, she's doing those things well into their later years. And when people are just working to survive, the minute they can check out, the minute they can retire, they're like, okay, show me the door. How do I get there? And then you're trading the frying pan for the skillet because you have all this freedom, but you don't have the economic wherewithal to enjoy the fruits of the labor that you spent so much time over the course of your career journey. So now you're in your 60s, you're in your 70s, all the things you've wanted to do, but you never had time to do it. Now you can't do it because you don't have the money to do it. But if you find something that you're passionate about, and you clearly have done that, and one of the things that I also share with people were saying, the difference between being an entrepreneur and someone who's self-employed. And you learn that in your 20s. I'll be somebody that can help you step up your English game. But then at some point, I'm going to hire other people to do what it is I'm doing, because now I can scale. So now I'm in class making money. And that's the difference between being an entrepreneur, because you and your husband, you guys can be in the south of France making money. But if you're self-employed, when your business shuts down, so too does your income. And that's one of the things that I like to share with people as well, because it's all about learning from the examples that I've been able to be afforded. You know, being from West Virginia, there's a lot of opportunity that existed I didn't necessarily see growing up. Now, granted, I wasn't living in the hood. I was living in a very nice set of circumstances. But despite the fact, there were limits on who I've seen myself becoming. And I knew I could go to college because the local HBCU down the street afforded me that reality. And I took the richness for granted as it pertains to the type of people that my college produced. Who knew until the movie Hidden Figures that my college produced Katherine Johnson? Who knew that? I didn't know that, but when did we find out? When the movie came out. Which is why I always tell people, tell your story. You have a story to tell. There's a little girl out there that needs to hear your story. Hopefully she hears it on the podcast. But I guarantee if we adapt your story into a Lifetime movie, and that's something else that we do. Shameless plug. We're all about content creation. So we have a lot of different resources at our disposal that I think can really make the things that I see to be your reality in the future something that it may even surprise you. And that might be hard to do considering all of what it is you've managed to accomplish.
Like that's one thing I am looking for opportunities all the time. And like I said, I think the journey wasn't just about me. Like the journey is about like, hey God, who am I supposed to impact along the way? Because my struggle shouldn't just be me overcoming. It should be like you said, like somebody hearing that and feeling encouraged and feeling motivated. Because a lot of times when we don't see ourselves in those spaces, it's hard for us to arrive there. So if I don't show up as a Black female real estate developer doing affordable housing, how do I like that next, the generation after me, that one little girl who's thinking about real estate might not think it as possible because she hasn't been able to see it and touch it. And so
Right.
that's kind of where I am now, is just making sure that these lessons, even that I learned as I crack into the real estate industry and just development, is how do I, transfer that knowledge, right? How do I transfer that knowledge and help someone else not take as long? It shouldn't take you as long as it's taken me 3 years to build my financial stack. So hopefully the next person that I come in contact with that desires to do this, maybe it'll only take them 1.5 years because we've been able to navigate some systems and some processes to shorten up their time that it took.
I know that being a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, it affords you the opportunity to be around other like-minded women. So talk us through the impact the sorority has had on your life as you know it.
I love my sorority, and I have come to meet and know and connect with so many powerful Black women that are, I'm just going to talk like just affordable housing and just community development and economic development. I just actually spoke at a conference in Chicago, and one of my sorors hosted that as Emerging Developers Conference for minority developers. Emerging Developers Conference for minority developers. And I was able to pitch my project, almost like a Shark Tank. So I was able to talk about the project that I'm working on in the room with CDFIs, so lenders, investment funds, banks, all in this room. So I did that and ended up meeting another one of my sorors who is the vice president of LITech for US Bank. And so we were able to connect and we've stayed in contact, and just understanding what that journey looks like and having these sorors in different cities and different states and connecting just reignites my whole decision to select my sorority, right? And I'm just thankful that they selected me because I love it. I've had great opportunities to meet some phenomenal women that are doing phenomenal work in this space that have given me a seat at the table. And that's, I couldn't ask for more, that are literally walking through this with me. Like, hey, Rashane, when are you doing your next LITech project, low income housing tax credit project, or your next mixed use project? And I'm like, look, I just, let me close this deal. Let me get this one. But then they're helping me expand my thought process as far as my pipeline projects. What's the next project? So I was able to actually purchase another building to start the second project. So when this first one is done, and I'm hoping we'll be breaking ground in about 6 months, I'll be able to position this other project that I've already secured about $2 million for. I'll be able to pipeline that project to start. But it's being at the table, being in the rooms, and then having and meeting my other sorors and connecting with them and having them just walk me through the process. I mean, it's just like I met you, my frat, Jerry. I mean, he's phenomenal, and he's in Arizona.
In between
And
both.
yeah, between both. And so just him connecting us and just hearing that story and figuring out instantly, okay, how can I connect her with someone that can help this move along a little quicker? And so when that's like we talked about paying it forward. So that's how I desire to be. How can I help the
Right.
next person navigate this process so that they don't have to wait as long as I have? Or how can I bring them to the table? How can I give them a voice? How can I
Right.
help support them? And so it's a lot of that. But yeah, I love my sorority, and I'm really thankful for just the beautiful women that I've met, that we find that we're connected on so many levels, not just for the reason we joined, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, but for the reason that we stay connected, the reason why
Right.
we're vested in our communities, the reason why we continue to do the work. And so I'm excited about this next chapter, right? I
Right.
think I'm in the middle of a chapter, but I'm excited about it.
This episode of Prepare for Takeoff is brought to you in part by Riverside, the platform that I trust to record studio quality podcasts right from my laptop. With Riverside, I get crystal clear audio and 4K video. Plus, it's super easy to use. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, Riverside helps your podcast sound amazing. Try it out for yourself. Click the affiliate link in our show notes and start recording like a pro with Riverside. I like to say that other communities, although they may have privilege, in our community, we have relationships. And I
Yes.
think our sororities and fraternities, it affords us those relationships and to be able to expand on our network.
Yes.
Because as people will say, I'm a subscriber of it myself, your network is directly tied to your net worth. And no different than that little girl or boy who it takes seeing to believe it. When you are in a room with other people who are far more incentivized to want to help you succeed because they have those things in common. People who aren't in the D9, I explain it to them in this manner. I said, the D9 affords you the opportunity to meet extended relatives all over the country. So imagine going to any city you can pick and find on the map, and you're going to meet an extended relative, and they're going to embrace you like an extended relative, more so than somebody that you meet and they're cool with you, but because you're a stranger, the engagement is going to be different. But if you meet a family member, you go back down south where your dad is from, you might meet somebody you've never met. But because you're family, you have a place to stay. You ain't gonna worry about going hungry. That's how the D9 is. Those are the things that I share with people. I'm coming up on 35 years in the fraternity. So I've been able to be afforded the opportunity to walk indoors courtesy of my association with the fraternity based on the people who have been willing to open those doors on my behalf. So for me, every chance I get, I do the same. And not just in my fraternity and not the sisterly love that we have for Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, but I'm willing to do it for everybody in the D9. I'm willing to do it for everybody who looks like us because at the end of the day, the people who taught me this game as it relates to, how I've been able to navigate in every facet of entertainment, the sad, unfortunate truth, I didn't learn this from people who look like me. I learned it from people who don't look like me. I learned it and I seen what they did and how they move. And these are people who don't worship on Sunday. They worship on Saturday. And these are people that have a very close-knit group of individuals that they're able to tap into. So as I was able to see them, I'm like, I can make that a reality for us. Because it doesn't matter what they're involved in. They're always showing up 5D. Or you'll see somebody that say, well, call my lawyer. But I'm like, but you're a lawyer. But call my lawyer and then my business partner who has nothing to do with this deal because they're constantly pulling each other into deals. So they would rather have a piece of 20 deals than having one deal in its entirety. And we have to develop that mindset as a community. And we have, I think our generation, we're leading the charge. We understand how important it is to work together as a collective. And even the reality as we know it, how we're under attack and how ICE is on the streets and nobody's safe. When we find ourselves in these situations, we're saying you're proof positive of it. All those are the latest lemons. And we have to figure out a way to make lemonade out of those lemons. Because when things are calm, when things are cool, the people begin to develop a false sense of security. And that's definitely something that we don't necessarily want to be subscribers to. And we want to continue to be reminded that we can, as I mentioned before, the African proverb, if we want to go somewhere far, we have to go with others. And you have gone extremely far from humble beginnings to affording the community all of the resources that you've been able to bestow in Lansing, Michigan and beyond. I'm so honored to have you share your journey with us. As we close out, I would like to give you the opportunity to leave our viewers and listeners with 3 things that you feel will help them prepare for takeoff.
Okay, so my 3 things are, the first one is know your role before you chase the opportunity. And that's mainly because You want to protect your energy, and you want to make sure that you don't confuse distraction with destiny. And so know your role before you chase the opportunity. The second one I would say is don't confuse access with partnership. So everyone in the room isn't always invested in your outcome. Make sure you find people that are connected and invested in your success. And then my third one would be learn the system that you're trying to change. Everything operates by a system, and passion without a process, it only takes you so far. So I always say, make sure that you learn the system that you're trying to change. So get in there, do the homework, do your due diligence, and figure it out.
That's awesome. Rashane, I'm sure that our viewers and listeners, they're going to want to tap in. How can they find you on social media, website, whatever information you feel comfortable with sharing?
Social media, Rashane Lonzo. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I do a little TikTok every now and again.
Are you on LinkedIn as well?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm sorry. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I figured you would be.
Yep.
So, Rashane, listen, once again, thank you for sharing candidly about your journey, about your humble beginnings, and how you soared to heights that only people can imagine. I'm certain if you told the little girl from around the way that this would be your reality, you probably would say, no way.
Right. You're right. Thank you so much for having me. I have truly enjoyed it, and I'm just honored to be a part of your phenomenal guests that you've had on your podcast. So thank you.
I wouldn't have it no other way. I'm always proud when I can elevate people in our community and to continue to amplify Black excellence. And you're truly the embodiment of Black excellence, both you and your husband, all the things you're doing in the community. So much continued success. Thank you for spending so much of your time with us. And also I wanted to thank our viewers and listeners. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or you're watching us on Spotify or you're listening to us on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Audible, iHeart, or Pandora. As you know, every week we're going to continue to bring you proven professionals or rising entrepreneurs. And all of these conversations, just like this one, will help you prepare for takeoff. Rashane, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tara. I appreciate it.